Alrighty, guys, welcome to Male Talking Points. This is going to be a video critique about how the young women are rejecting sex positivity, and they're calling it a feminist realignment. So anyway, let's take a look at this video because they make some points here that uh, you'll see. It's just kind of interesting what they blame for the problem. Of course, there's no personal accountability, so let's begin here.
Emily, what's on your radar?
Well, let's talk about Michelle Goldberg. Last week, the New York Times columnist published a post-Me Too reevaluation of sex positivity. This week, she slammed the ACLU for modifying a Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote to neutralize references to women. But casual sex and gender neutrality are pillars of the contemporary feminist pitch. Goldberg, one of the most prominent feminist writers in media, is effectively rebuking both of them. She isn't alone either. In July, BuzzFeed published a deep dive headlined, "These Gen Z women think sex positivity is overrated," reporting that, quote, uneasiness with sex positivity is bubbling to the surface, especially in some Gen Z quarters. Quote, we all really embraced third-wave feminism and sex positivity, and it impacted us so negatively, a 23-year-old rape survivor told the outlet. Being told that you should be having sex with people you don't have any relationship with really put in our minds that sex doesn't matter. I feel like we all just kind of got effed over.
Alrighty, so I think what's happening now, especially with the rise of not so much the internet as much as social media, you have a whole generation now of women, which are millennial women, and these younger women are starting to see the consequences of what happens when you have a hookup culture. You know, you go girl, you know, your body's your own, you can do whatever you want with it. And I think now, just like all of us guys who are red pill MRA, the MGTOW guys, men have known this already because we are on the other end of the spectrum, especially as 80% of men who have traditional ideas about relationships for the most part, and we have long seen the destruction of these ladies and their bad decisions. But the thing is I think now we are starting to get a few of them who are starting to realize that it is the women and their choices that have made this become what it has become. But this lady is going to blame something else. Let's continue.
Now, in a column that referenced the BuzzFeed story, Goldberg observed, quote, sex positivity now seems to be fading from fashion among younger people, failing to speak to their longings and frustrations. Goldberg said, I started noticing the turn away from sex positivity a few years ago when I wrote about a revival of interest in Andrea Dworkin's work. Since then, there have been growing signs of young women rebelling against a culture that prizes erotic license over empathy and responsibility. Here's the best part. Somehow, she concludes, as sex positivity went mainstream and infused with a culture shaped by pornography, attention to emotion got lost. Somehow? Well, maybe the proliferation and intensification of pornography had something to do with all of the sex positivity. On the change.
So, this, from my gist, this lady here is a conservative woman, and most conservative women will blame pornography. Pornography is the all root of evil. But I think it was more just their bad decision making. I mean, that would be like a guy who has committed a bad crimes against women for let's just say that. If a guy has been committed or been convicted of crimes against women, and we know what kind of crimes I'm talking about, and he uses it's because the proliferation of pornography in court to justify his actions, you know, women would be outraged, and most guys would be like, "Dude, you did the crime." I mean, that's where even today men are expected to be. Our expectations of holding accountability for our actions are still much higher for men than it is for even these liberated women who have all the choice in the world to make what personal decisions they want to make. And right now they're just easily blaming it on pornography because, you know, pornography is all ran by men who objectify women and all of this. That's what they try to claim. So let's continue.
To Ginsbergs' quote, which argued for abortion rights, Goldberg wrote, quote, changing Ginsberg's words treats what was once a core feminist insight that women are oppressed on the basis of their reproductive capacity as an embarrassing anachronism. She spoke specifically about women for a reason, Goldberg said. That is exactly right. Earlier in the column, Goldberg also criticized the, quote, Orwellian effect of altering language. That's two blows against the dogma of cultural leftism in one dogmatic cultural leftist column. And two columns.
So as you can see right here, just the way this lady is laughing, she's coming from a very right-wing conservative viewpoint. I mean, the way she's laughing at it. And I think even she's using her ideologies to blame something other than the women themselves for the destructiveness that has led to what she's talking about.
In a row. So again, as with her argument on sex positivity, Goldberg was hardly the only person to criticize the ACLU from the left over the quote change. She even got the organization's executive director to admit his regret. So while it's interesting that Goldberg, one of the staunchest feminists in corporate media, issued gentle but pretty fundamental rebukes to the feminist movement back to back, her individual qualms really are indicative of a sea change. Goldberg avoids blaming her fellow ideological travelers, and maybe herself, for creating an ACLU responsive to radicalized young staffers whose worldview erases distinctions earlier feminists fought for, or for leaving a generation of young women emotionally scarred from the casual sex they were told would feel empowering. No, she blames porn without pausing to blame sex positivity for its proliferation and intensification and the proliferation of norms that clearly are hurting Gen Z women, as has been reported. But porn, as Goldberg suggested in her reference to Dworkin, is itself becoming another issue in the feminist realignment. Me Too's generational tensions were absolutely illuminating. The fresh lens that Ryan Murphy is right now applying to Monica Lewinsky, largely after others have done the same post-2016, puts 2021's feminism at odds with 1990s feminism, and right.
I like how basically they're comparing the ladies' movement is the ladies' movement. I think they're just trying to make something as like, oh, what it is now. Yeah, it is evolving. Ideas are evolving, but at its core, what it was in the 1990s is pretty much like it is now. The only thing that has changed is with social media, we are starting to see that some of these what they want to blame, like she said, pornography and this are two different subjects. And I think for the longest time, they've all these ladies have been so focused at, oh, it's men exploiting women, it's this, it's that. But we're all starting to see the truth now. Both men and women are starting to see the truth. And the thing is these young ladies are not being held accountable for their own personal decisions that they have made.
Rightfully so. In some ways, the Me Too explosion revealed that men and women are still adjusting to the important feminist victories of the second half of the 20th century, victories that put them in close quarters in white-collar jobs, scrambling family arrangements, and childcare. Women should not have to sacrifice those freedoms. They were hard-earned, and by some women with whom I disagree on a whole lot of issues. But if we pause for a moment and squint, we're in the early stages of what really does seem to be a feminist realignment. Of course, this isn't to say progressive women are all crypto-conservatives. They are not, they will not be. Most of the country is not. But the less cultural dominance, fueled by technology and mass media, changed the world very quickly. It's like a half century in the scope of human history. It's too bad that at least one generation of young women have been caught up in that adjustment, subjected to a hookup culture fueled by porn that left them.
Right there. That is what really makes me mad. They were subjected to a hookup culture based upon porn. Really? So you're saying that if there was no pornography, these independent women wouldn't be out sleeping around using their hypergamous nature and their bodies to their advantage. I find that very hard to believe. Stop blaming pornography for this, because these ladies made the choice. These are ladies who are still going to bars looking for Mr. Right in their late 30s and 40s. I do not think anywhere, maybe there is a genre of pornography that these women are watching where the theme is, let's be a middle-aged woman and try to go get as much CC as we can at the bar. Come on. Responsibility here.
That left too many of them hurt, alone past their wishes, childless past their wishes, and much less empowered than they were told.
Alone and childless past their wishes. Listen to the wording here, guys. This is a conservative woman. See, even the most conservative woman at some fundamental level has grown up. This lady right here is definitely probably in her mid-30s, so she was born in the 80s. Everyone born after 1965, men and women, have slowly been programmed with feminism. And at some fundamental level, even this conservative woman will not admit they are where they're at in their life because of personal choices they made. They weren't left out. They made choices that put them in that position. There's no one to blame except for themselves. They kept looking for the highest value guy and never cashed in when they were at their most purest and they were at their most fertile. And it is what it is. You can blame everything you want, but they blame everything but personal accountability with these women.
The good news, as we discussed here yesterday, is that a progressive like Goldberg took issue with the ACLU's, quote, Orwellian language manipulation. If we can at least return to a relaxed climate for speech, we can really start debating these painful and difficult and extremely consequential reactions to dramatic shifts in our cultural norms, so we can agree on policies that actually benefit women, from Title IX.
Well, that's kind of funny because a lot of us guys in the MGTOW, red pill, a lot of us guys, we basically say this is what a genuine good guy, us 80%ers that most women look over, friend zone us or whatever. We basically say this is what most guys are looking in a long-term relationship or marriage, and we are automatically told that we're misogynist, this and that. But I guess guys, what's really the case is pornography. That's why we are the way we are, according to this. I mean, we need language. I mean, yeah, these ladies do not like to be told no. They think they can have it all, and they can't.
to family leave, instead of erasing the distinctions that actually promote equality. Right.
Okay, we got a stupid commercial here.
Reported in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So we got to wait for this to, oh, here we go. I can skip it.
Right, this is not to say that every woman should or wants to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Of course that's not true. I don't think that's what women want. I don't think that's what most women...
See, even right there, the most conservative woman has some of the fundamentals of feminism in their bloodstream. Just by that statement she said right there.
desire for themselves or should be subjected to at all. But the distinctions that feminists fought for, Title IX is really a fantastic example of this, in earlier waves, those are important for women. Those are very important for women. And to see Michelle Goldberg sort of finally, there was a long time where it felt like a lot of true feminists had a hard time speaking out about these things, didn't even want to sort of touch the issue of the ACLU or touch the issue of sex positivity because they're really thorny conversations and you get swamped the second that you sort of rebuke the dogma. I think these two back-to-back columns were actually a really positive sign that at least the climate is changing.
Oh, she's talking about what most of these women would call toxic masculinity. Because we're talking about these issues, and we have now for 15, 20 years have been talking about the flaws of these issues. And what do? They try to silence men. You know, men are garbage to these women. We don't need no man. We don't need this. But when we try to put our opinion, this is how the other sex feels, we are disregarded. But now it's getting to the point where some young ladies are starting to speak up and starting to realize this is not in our own benefit. They're waking up.
To sort of rethink some of these questions publicly.
Do you think that the pendulum is swinging, or do you think this is kind of a synthesis moment in the sense where, after being on one side here, the thesis swing over here to the antithesis, and then you kind of blend those two things to make actual progress and find something new? Or do you think this is just backlash and pendulum swinging back and forth?
Yeah, I think the first way you described it is better. To some extent, it's not mutually exclusive. Like, just to some extent, it's what is old is being blended with what is new. So it's...
I think what it is the fact that social media started off real big with MySpace around 2003. So 2023 is only a couple years away. We're in late 2021 right now. And I think what's happened is there's been a whole generation of women. Social media is like a drug to some of these girls. And some of these girls, and then it got to Facebook, and then ultimately it got to OnlyFans, where a girl can use her body, her liberated body, to make high profits off of her body, which is kind of funny because they're blaming pornography. And then when they talk about pornography, it's about how men are exploiting women. I bet you 99.9% of all of these girls on OnlyFans did not have a gun pointed to their head. They chose to do that. Maybe for money. You can blame whatever it is. They made the choice. And it's a very destructive choice. I do not like OnlyFans because what does it do to men too? That's one thing that they don't really talk about when it comes to pornography. How about this whole generation of 20-something-year-old Gen Z guys who would love to have a girlfriend, but all the girls out are out exploiting themselves and writing the CC. What are they left? The sick thing about OnlyFans is, unlike regular porn, they get like there's an intimacy between the guy and the girl. She's almost like a digital girlfriend to him. But the sad thing is you can go and look. Most of these OnlyFans girls despise the guys that are throwing money at her. So all around, it is at first a more emotionally damaging to the guy, but who cares? Men are not important in this society right now. We have no value, especially a guy in his 20s. Who gives a crap how it affects them? But they also say pornography affects them and makes them violent and against women. They will always talk about the adverse effects that it has and how men are perpetrators and this and that. But how about these women who are just using these guys? These guys are throwing probably every little bit of money they're making at a fast food job while living in mom's basement, making this girl live like, better than most guys. She's probably making 50 or 100 grand a year, and some make many more, just giving away their purity to everybody on the internet. But it just makes me funny that they keep treating these girls like they are the victims. They're only the victims of their bad decisions because these girls don't seem to have any insight into their own futures. They just see that money coming in. They all fundamentally at some level know that their youthfulness and their body is not going to be valuable anymore. But once again, it goes back to you don't shame a lady. Well, the thing is that lady investing that money that she's making from OnlyFans. So when she is no longer able to sell the product she's selling right now on her own free will, that when that becomes no longer economically feasible, that she's investing that money she's making right now into something that will make her money later on in her life. It's funny how they just don't talk about the dynamics of stuff like that. Of course, young women are rejecting this because it has, like that one girl said in that comment, it has done nothing but screwed them.
It is moving back to an extent, but I also don't see it as like reversing any progress, because I think when one ideology wins in the sort of culture and becomes dominant, the excesses, and you can point back to eras when conservatism was culturally dominant where the same thing happened, the excesses are really quickly normalized and mainstreamed of that ideology. And with feminism, the sort of academic, fringy excesses of it are this like weird gender neutrality that doesn't actually help women because it erases sex distinctions. And Title IX, again, is a really good example of this. And so to that extent, I see this really as more of just a moderating of the equality movement as it relates to women.
And Michelle Goldberg's in an interesting place to do it because she's Gen X, so she's in between kind of the Gen Zs and the Boomers.
That's a good point.
Who are at such odds with each other at this point. But on the other hand, Gen Z and Gen X, there's a huge gulf between us and them. How do you think that this is going to be received by Gen Z?
Well, I think Gen Z is already, and Michelle writes about this in her piece, and how there's TikToks that are, the Gen Z is creating TikToks that are sort of questioning feminist orthodoxy as it relates to sex positivity in a very Gen Z way, which is super funny, but it makes a lot of sense because it's a very painful time, I think, for young women. I don't think it's pleasant for a lot of young women.
And why is that? Why is it? Why don't any of you ladies, even a conservative one like this, basically tell them that you are here because of the decisions you have made for yourself? Feminism wants everything to be 50-50. Here's even a conservative woman. From the time a guy is born, no matter how feminized you've been, even if you've been raised by a single mother, a man is expected to have accountability for his actions. Even the most weak beta males are supposed to have accountability for their actions. That is how single mothers raise their boys. You be respectful to women. You be this to women. You know. And basically, they've created a whole generation of very soft men. But even those soft men take accountability for. They might not at very first, but at some point, they will be held accountable for their bad decisions. And once again, the ladies seem to be getting a pass here.
And it's a very, like, our sexual politics are very confused right now. But if we can at least go back and start talking about some of the basics of what is desired by women, what is healthy for women, as opposed to what's healthy for men, because a lot of, I think, the excesses of feminism were great for men. Hookup culture, great for men.
Oh, she's using this crap again. Great for men. The 80% of the 20-year-old group of men are not getting sex. That is why there is pornography. Come on, lady. This is what gets us guys boiling. Oh, it is great for men. Oh, it's not great for women? Because obviously it must be good for women, because these girls now, you can say that about the old pornography, you know, because we didn't see the dynamics of how that worked, you know. Yeah, there probably were a lot of women being exploited or coerced, as they say, into doing some of these scenes. But I think in the last 5 years, OnlyFans has really debunked that. I don't think... Like I said, I bet you the amount of women on OnlyFans who are being coerced into doing it is probably less than 1%. All these girls are using their body to make a lot of money, and whatever happens to them, I've read articles where some of them are getting stalked and this and that. Is that right? No, it's not right, but there's cause and effect for every decision you make. And they just go into something without thinking of the potential negative side effects or even dangers that might come upon them for engaging in these activities. And still, they're like, oh, it's there because it pleasures men. Come on. Don't be ridiculous. There's plenty of women out there who watch pornography too. I am sick and tired, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are sick and tired of hearing this crap.
Not as well loved by women, as it turns out, when you sort of do that experiment. And so I think Gen Z is going to sort of be happy to start hearing that.
Is part of this Gen Z being more interested in gender than sexuality?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's absolutely true. And that's, I mean, again, though, a lot of these conversations are, like, Gen Z, a lot of people might dismiss as just sort of, you know, it's all euphoria, whatever happens on the HBO show, and it's, you know, that kind of thing, just in the same way it happened with millennials and girls, which I love, by the way. But with Gen Z, they also are sort of swimming in the podcast universe, and a lot of them talked in the BuzzFeed piece about Tumblr. And so they're exposed to all of these, like,
Tumblr is still around?
Well, I think back when they were, like, even younger.
Oh, okay.
And so they're swimming in all of these different ideas, some of which are radical, some of which are reactionary. And I think they're going to be a very heterodox generation that's kind of hard to define, other than the fact that they're kind of heterodox, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Defined by their lack of definition.
Yeah, exactly. Ryan, I'm looking forward to your radar next. I'm sure it's going to be on feminism as well.
No doubt.
So there you have it, guys. Once again, according to this conservative woman, it's all about pornography. Us dirty men watching pornography, that's why these girls... No, I really think these girls, just like us guys in the red pill community, have seen the destruction of their own ideas. Because let's face it, the whole idea of... I mean, you look at a lot of these girls. There was that one on Fresh and Fit, Amanda. The one, she had this Karen bowl cut, and that was a show that Rollo Tomasi was on, and Kevin Samuels called in, and she has that cocky, I don't need no man, blah 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 blah. They are empowered. We got this power. Well, the thing is they make their choices, and every choice you make has a positive or negative effect. They can keep finger pointing and blaming whoever they want. When it comes down to it, they make the decisions in their lives. And I think what they're starting to see is with these young women are starting to see that basically that these millennial women were told, you go girl, you don't be held down, you can use your body as leverage. And they can. It's true. But they're also starting to see that you keep using that leverage and you never cash in. It all comes down to personal responsibility, guys. And unfortunately, right now, we live in a world where still they want everything 50-50, but they don't want to take no accountability for their action. So for now, this is Male Talking Points. I will see you again sometime here in the future. Have a good day.